Going to be talking this morning about healthy living. And I know it's something that we are all aware of, but we just want to bring back to our minds the essence of healthy living. You know, we can't really do without a healthy lifestyle. Do you agree with me? So we need these reminders every now and again. So the title is Healthy Living, and we have this outline. I'm going to go briefly on this outline. We'll look at the definition of health. We'll look at what healthy living really is. We'll look at the sources of illnesses and diseases and what are the interventions. And we'll look at the steps that we can take to a healthy living. First of all, what is health? We already know that the World Health Organization has a global definition as far back as 1948, which says that health is physical, mental, and social well-being, and not just the absence of disease. However, over time, this definition has also been expanded to include occupational well-being, to include emotional well-being, financial well-being, even spiritual well-being. So what we have discovered is that if your pocket is empty, somehow it has a way of affecting your mental well-being, right? So it's important that all those areas are addressed when we're talking about health. But let's look at healthy living. What does healthy living actually mean? Healthy living has to do with a way of life, and we can also call it our lifestyle. Let me define lifestyle. The medical dictionary tells us that lifestyle is a set of habits and customs that are influenced by our socialization, our interactions, and these have an important implication on our health. And what are the interactions that we have on a day-to-day basis? This is an interaction. You are here in this meeting, and whatever you are getting from this interaction, whatever you are going to eat as a result of this interaction has an impact on your health. You can imagine going for a meeting or even a wedding or a naming ceremony, and you are given a meal, and then you get home the following day and you are purging and you discover that you are weak. You have to be rushed to the hospital. Some people even end up with IV fluid. So that tells you that that interaction that we had resulted in ill health. Am I right? But there are some that are very subtle. We are not really conscious of it. We are not conscious of what is being said. And so you find out that you make the wrong choices. And that's why we're sharing this information. Now, God desires our good health. Do we agree with me? We all know the importance of the salvation of our souls, of being born again, of following Christ, of winning souls to Christ. That has to do with a spiritual dimension of our health, which studies have shown also affect our mental well-being and even your physical well-being as well. So what do the scriptures say really? Because God always has something to say about every aspect of our lives. What does the Bible say about our health? I'm going to share some scriptures with us to show us how God favors a healthy lifestyle. But I want us to know that there are some approaches to health. And those approaches do not change because of this talk we are giving you. So I don't want you to leave here thinking that because there is a lifestyle approach, every other approach, I'm not going to do anything about it. So we have the drug treatment approach. It's still important. Once you are acutely ill, you need to get treatment. And God is the one who is behind that medical intervention to ensure that you are well. Sometimes it's surgery. Please don't run away from surgery if the doctor advises you to have surgery. There are medical interventions, there are lots of procedures. However, a healthy lifestyle is also an instruction from God. And we also have divine healing. Divine healing is when God just decides that in spite of everything that is going on now, I'm going to intervene and turn things around. And we are not obligated to to say that, God, you must do this way. God might choose to do it in a different way. He might choose to heal you by giving you an instruction about your health, which will now turn around that situation. So let's look at why God favors a healthy lifestyle. I will just point our attention to that scripture. Write it down. I'm not going to read it through. Just write it down and go back and think about it. So James chapter 2 from verse 14 to 20. I want you to read about those scriptures. And one of the things I want to point out here is that if somebody is naked and cold, are you going to pray and say, go, let it be well with you? Is that what you're going to say when you have a blanket that you can use to cover that person? In the same way, if there's a habit that you have or a lifestyle that you have that is causing a problem, are you going to say it is well with me? I'm drinking this thing, but it is well with me. Is that what we're going to do? So there's an instruction. And let's also put down these two scriptures. Romans 6, 1 to 2. What shall we say then? Shall we continue in sin that grace might abound? So you are taking something that is damaging yourselves. Do you want to continue doing that because you know that there's grace anyway? God will always heal me. So write it down. 1 Corinthians 6, 19 to 20. So let's go to what healthy living really means, or what healthy lifestyle really means. According to the World Health Organization, a healthy lifestyle is a way of living that lowers the risk of being seriously ill or dying early. So to avoid dying early or becoming very ill, it's very important that we live a healthy lifestyle. And I must mention here that during the pandemic, the people who had very severe cases of coronavirus infection, who came down with coronavirus infection, studies showed that they had some chronic conditions, some underlying medical conditions like diabetes, hypertension, heart disease, high cholesterol, and these are lifestyle-related diseases. So those were the things that led to them becoming ill and dying from COVID-19. However, I knew quite a number of people who were positive, but yet they didn't have any problem, even though they were positive. So those are examples of lifestyle-related diseases. People develop obesity as a result of their lifestyle. They develop hypertension, even some cancers have been associated with our lifestyle. And the leading cause of death now is what we call cardiovascular diseases. Those are the diseases that affect the heart and the blood vessels. And we have some other statistics, which I'm not going to go over right now, that show how prevalent, these diseases are. So let's look at the pillars of a healthy lifestyle. We actually have 6 major pillars, and I'm going to be dwelling mostly on healthy eating. We'll be talking more about eating. However, we have the pillar of nutrition. That's our diet. We have the pillar of physical activity. We have the pillar of our emotional and mental well-being. We also have the pillar of our psychology, what to think about yourself or how you view situations. We also have the pillar of sleep and the pillar of avoiding harmful substances, things like alcohol, tobacco. Some people now take cough syrups because they want to feel high. There are some people, you remember the time when we had tramadol prevalence within, the market, and there was a ban on it. So those are the kind of substances that we want people to avoid. Sometimes you might even have to avoid things like caffeine. Sometimes it could be cola nut. I've had people come and tell me that I couldn't sleep because I ate cola nut or because I took a particular thing. So he wants to know that that thing is harmful for you, you avoid. So let's talk about healthy eating. Healthy eating is actually optimal nutrition. And this our body needs nutrition. The same way you have to fuel a car. You can imagine if you fuel a car with the wrong fuel, with contaminated or mixed fuel, what happens to that car? It begins to, what's the word now that they use? Yes. So it's very important that we feed our body with the right fuel that will enable us to carry out our daily activities. And Food is connected with every social activity. In fact, if you go for an event and there's no food, you know how you review the people that organized. If everything else was beautiful and there was no food, you will not have a good memory or recollection of that event. Even Jesus had to change water into wine, and at a wedding. And that wine, I believe, was non-alcoholic wine. So, okay, let's look at what are the things that are important about our food. What we would advocate for us to eat are things that are predominantly whole foods, that have not gone through a lot of processing. You can imagine that many of us, we go for the rice that comes from outside the country. That's what we want because it is polished. But do you know the characteristic of that polished rice is that the fiber has been stripped off. And so we don't have enough of fiber that will control the rate at which it enters the bloodstream. I'm going to show us a list of foods as well as what we call the glycemic indices. A glycemic index is the rate at which the food you eat, the glucose from that food, the rate at which it enters your bloodstream. And whether you're eating beans, whether you're drinking a fruit juice, or you're eating a bar, everything you are eating enters your bloodstream as glucose or sugar. So I'm going to show us that list shortly. It will guide us to know how often we should choose certain foods. In our culture, we won't ban you and say, don't eat pounded yam, don't eat eba, don't eat amala. No, that's not the guidance. But we want to know, what is the portion size? How often should I eat this? There are other things I must eat with this meal that will help me better. So that's one. And then also we talk about minimal products, dairy products, anything that comes from an animal. Minimal dairy products. So studies have linked many of these chronic diseases that people come down with, it has linked those chronic diseases with meat products, especially red meat. And it has been put in a category, a grade A category, of the things that can cause cancer within the human body. But a lot of people don't see themselves going off meat. So it's important that we know this. As much as possible, we need to avoid free sugars and control our portions. So we'll conclude with sugars. Let's talk about sugars. We have some information from the American Heart Association. And the recommendation is that a woman should not have more than 6 teaspoons of sugar in a day, as well as children. And that comes to about 24 to 25 grams of sugar in a day. And a man should not, or a male should not have more than 36 grams, which is equivalent to 9 teaspoons of sugar. Now, you might be thinking that this is much, but they are not talking about table sugar. They are talking about added sugar. And added sugar means that thing is added to anything that you are eating. It can be added to beverages like Milo, like Bonvita, like Ovaltine. It can be added to all these cereals, breakfast cereals, all these Cocoa Pops. It can be added to biscuits, to cakes, to small chops. I know that if they start serving small chops here now, there are some people that will say, I grab my own, But those things, they contain added sugars, and a lot of it for that matter. By the time you quantify it, let's not even talk about that bottle of Coke or that bottle of Fanta or malt. Some people think that malt doesn't have sugar. It has sugar too. And the sugar is refined. That's one thing we need to understand, because we have different types of sugar. We have complex sugars. We have processed or refined sugars. Those refined sugars are the ones that we are trying to avoid, because the way they enter our bloodstream can cause damage. What are the hazards? And you can see there that I put that a 35 cl of soda or Coke contains 10 teaspoons of sugar. And I have people that will come and tell me that I take up to 7 bottles of Coke in a day. Yes, we have people like that. Or people that eat a whole chicken in a day. So it is important that we are aware that that is a lifestyle. So this is a list of the hazards. Weight gain. Mrs. Adesoye had already talked about how weight gain can affect our knee joints. This is one of the common reasons why we see people coming to our clinic, because of the arthritis. And we have to address the root cause, which is their weight. How about heart disease? It's linked to heart disease. It's as bad as salt. One of the things we need to avoid is the salt, and we have a certain type of sodium in these condiments. We have all these cubes. Even locust beans, they use a lot of salt. Many of these Maggi cubes, Knorr cubes, there is monosodium glutamate in those things. We need to cut down on those things and use natural flavors like garlic, onions, turmeric. Those are better. It's also linked to high cholesterol, high blood pressure, fatty liver disease. In fact, that has become a common complaint now. Fatty liver. People just go for a checkup and discover they have a fatty liver. How about toothache, cavities in the teeth, mood problems, depression, poor sleep? If you take a high dose of sugar before bedtime, you have a problem falling asleep. She mentioned gout. Gout is also one of the things that is a hazard of sugar, kidney stones, even aging prematurely. So let's look at this table. I'm going to conclude now. My time is up. So look at this table. It just shows the glycemic index of certain foods. Certain foods. We have high carbohydrate foods like white wheat bread. So the glycemic index of white wheat bread is 75 plus or minus 2. Whole wheat bread is 74 plus or minus 2. But what I want to point out here is that there's really not much of a difference between white wheat bread and whole wheat bread. I hope you know that all the bread that we eat comes from wheat. It's only when it is powdered and the fiber is removed that we now call it white wheat bread. But there's not much of a difference between the two. But there's some specialty breads, they call them whole grain breads, that they have done it in such a way that the fiber is still a lot. You can see the glycemic index of that one, 53. The next slide shows corn tortilla. Tortilla is a kind of flat bread. You know, it is like unleavened bread, and they use corn to make it. Look at the glycemic index, 46. That's the rate at which it enters the bloodstream, very slowly. So instead of it to have a curve that goes up like this, you have a curve that goes like this. And you don't get hungry on time when you eat foods that have fiber. It's foods that have good amounts of fiber that have this kind of glycemic index. Look at white rice, 73. So you can see that white rice and white bread, they're almost on the same range. Look at brown rice. So you can see the glycemic index drops, 68. Barley, we don't have barley in this part of the world, but remember the Bible talks a lot about barley. 28. Sweet corn, the corn that we eat, corn on the cob, is even better when it comes to fiber content, and it releases glucose gently and slowly into the bloodstream. 52. Spaghetti has a lower glycemic content compared with rice. 49. If it is whole meal, 48. Not much of a difference. Rice noodles, not the type that we have in the market, is 53. The next slide shows vegetables. I can't go away without talking about vegetables, but just to take a look. We have boiled potato, we have French fries, we have carrots. So just take a look at it. I'm not going to read it out again. Let's go to the next slide. We have the fruits. You can see how low the glycemic index of fruits are. Very low. Very low. The one that is high there is watermelon. So some people will cut a whole watermelon and eat everything at the same time. So if you are eating a whole watermelon at the same time, yes, people have told me, somebody told me he would take a whole watermelon with pineapple. Some people will even blend everything together and you drink it that same day, you finish it. It's going to hit your bloodstream at a higher rate. The conclusion on all of this is that you can take steps to live a healthy lifestyle. We just have time to talk about eating today, and I just wanted to dwell on sugars because it is a big game changer. And if you are able to take important steps to cut down on your sugar intake, you will be able to control your weight better. You will reduce the risk of all those complications I listed. Your insulin level will be preserved. Insulin is like a growth hormone. The more sugar you consume, the more of it is secreted in your bloodstream, and that will even make you put on more weight. So thank you so much for your attention. I stop here.